like to welcome you all to the Greek Festival, to Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church, the Greek Festival here in Houston, the 58th, I believe. And so it's very nice to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate you spending time with us so we can share our culture with you, our Greek culture, but also for coming into the church and spending a few minutes maybe to learn a little about Orthodoxy in general, or our parish, or I guess any different number of things. I'm Kosta Georgeton. I'm one of the parishioners here at Annunciation. And what we're going to do for the next 30 minutes or so is have kind of a seated tour. I'll walk you through the Orthodox Church a little bit. First, I'll start off with a little bit of history of the community, talk a little bit about the church itself and some of the things that you see around you, and really open it up for question and answer. Just if you have questions along the way, please feel free to kind of stop and ask your questions. If there's anything you really want to know that I can't answer, we will find an answer for you. There are some pamphlets, some papers, and a couple of QR codes, I believe, as well, in the back, in the narthex of the table, so you can get a little more information if you like, and learn a little bit about Annunciation and the Orthodox Church in general. Okay, so with that, I will start. Our community is roughly about 900 to 1,000 families, and the community started back in 1917, and the original church was on Walker Street, which is now Discovery Green. The community grew fairly quickly. A lot of immigrants from Greece, and the community grew in the late 40s. This piece of property was purchased, and this church was built and actually consecrated in the early 1950s, 1952. So this building has been here for quite a while, this church building. The community, again, is about 100 years old. In 2017, we celebrated 100 years, of course, but we also undertook an expansion project. The original church was the width of where the columns are. And a few years ago, we decided we needed some more space. We were always having issues at Easter or Christmas with all the people coming to church. Where do you fit everybody? So we expanded. We actually pushed out the walls. So a lot of what you see is really new. The church has grown quite a bit. We went from about 400 or so seating capacity to about, well, over 800 if you count the balcony there as well. So it's a lot more convenient to get everybody together, which is really the goal of worship. The walls that you see, those question, how many have come before this Greek festival? Okay. If you came last year or a couple of years ago, you'll notice some things that are different. At first, we didn't, all the walls were white, all the ceiling was white. And so this year, we're kind of proud to talk about the iconography that's in the dome itself. Last year, we had the indentives with the four evangelists. And so that was new last year. This year, it's the dome, the iconography in the dome. And over the next several years, if you come back, you will see some additions on the walls, in the arches, and eventually in the choir loft back there. So you'll see iconography. Eventually, there will be very little white space. It's a little different. The churches in Greece, the churches in Jerusalem, the churches in Russia, all over the world are totally covered with icons, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is. So that's a little bit about our community. The Orthodox Church, if you're not familiar with it, is essentially the original church that was established at Pentecost. The church developed and for 1,000 years was a single Christian church, what we would call the church. And I think most of you probably know a little bit of church history, that around 1054 there was actually a schism that occurred in the church. And the two branches that went off, one is what we now know as the Roman Catholic Church. The other is the Orthodox Church that has continued to this day. The church that developed at the time of Christ, or following the time of Christ, grew. There was a lot of Roman persecution of Christians. I think everybody's kind of aware of what happened to the church at that point. The church still happened to grow. People worship essentially in cemeteries, in the catacombs. And the churches still were able to grow in terms of number of people. People believed and followed the Christian tradition. The church then, at the time of Constantine was the emperor, and in 313 issued the Edict of Milan, which opened up worship. When we talk about freedom of worship, that was Constantine the Great that started that tradition. And so the church then really took off. Okay? And so there were 5 centers of Christianity, 5 sees that were established. Rome, being the head of the Roman Empire, the capital of the Roman Empire, was one. Jerusalem, of course, was one. Alexandria in Egypt, Antioch, and what became Constantinople, was a small, tiny city, Byzantium, that is where Constantinople is now, present-day Istanbul in Turkey. The church was in those 5 seeds, those 5 centers of Christianity, and was very strong throughout the whole region. The church then experienced that period of growth. There were some issues that developed between the different areas that people, of course, as you can imagine, different priests, different bishops would have ideas that they would want to implement. And so there were differences in tradition that occurred, or that developed over throughout that region. The Church of Rome gradually grew and became what was known as the Church in the West. The other 4 centers is what we call the eastern part of the church. The bishops in the church would always get together. There was a collegial atmosphere, collegial environment. When they wanted to address a question of theology, the bishops would all get together and, through the guidance of the Holy Spirit, would issue dogma that, not really dogma, but I guess would clarify the dogma of the church. That developed further. The church in Constantinople, I guess, in Nicaea in 325, the church realized that we need to articulate the things that we believe. Okay? And so the first ecumenical council was held in Nicaea in 325, and what you see in the books, or you may see a card, I guess, with the Nicene Creed on it, which succinctly tells what we believe as Christians, as Orthodox Christians. Those of you who are Catholic will recognize it immediately. It's very familiar. The church developed, the churches, of course, had some issues, and there are always political issues when people are involved. In the Great Schism that occurred in 1054, the church split into the western part and the eastern part. And the 4 centers continued on. That's the Orthodox Church that we talk about today. That has grown not just in Greece, but throughout the region. In the late 900s, Prince Vladimir of Russia, or Rus at the time, sent out emissaries. He wanted a religion for his people. They wound up going to Constantinople. They realized this is what we want. So he took it. That's how the church, the Orthodox Church, expanded into Russia. Throughout Eastern Europe, what we call Eastern Europe now, that is, a lot of that is traditionally Orthodox. Those are traditionally Orthodox nations. So the church really grew through that time. Things have stayed the same. The traditions have stayed the same. And so what you see, and what I'll discuss in just a second, those traditions have been passed down for 17, 1800, 1900 years. So all these things that we talk about is a way of maintaining that tradition. Those of you who've seen the movie Fiddler on the Roof, remember the Father Tradition. That's kind of what we hold to. It's nice to have that a lot of times. So from the Orthodox perspective, what we do is the church, what you see here is you came into the narthex. Okay? So people come in, and that narthex is a dividing area. It's an airlock from the outside world. It's a nice place to come in, to settle down, to get your mind in the right frame of mind, to actually come into this part, into the nave, and worship. And so that's where a lot of we see that in the back, that people come in gradually. They come in, they light candles. The candles are lit in order to represent that we are the light of Christ, that we want the light of Christ in us. You come into the nave, you see here, it's kind of nice, and we've got a lot of room for people to come in. The parishioners face east. The church faces east. The interesting part of the Orthodox tradition is that the priest also faces east. So he is the leader of the community. He's the shepherd of the community. He is the captain of our little local ship, as it were. Okay. The nave, of course, kind of leads to the thought of navy. And our priest happens to be a Navy veteran, so we hear that a lot. We get the sense that we are this is the ark of salvation. So we are in a boat, we're headed east towards Christ, where Christ will come at the second coming. What you see in front of you is an icon screen. And the icon screen is there. It's not intended to be a barrier. Okay? I know a lot of people will ask the question of in the temple, when Christ was crucified, when Christ died, the temple in the curtain tore in two. So why do we have that curtain, so to speak, that is there? And the answer is that the curtain is still there, but the curtain is pulled back for people to come in. Okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about the iconography that shows that. That is every divine liturgy. These doors are open for people for the priest to come out and offer Holy Communion. Okay? That's the ultimate pinnacle of the worship service. Behind the icon screen is the altar. There's an altar table representing the tomb of Christ. It has actually relics of several saints in it as well. So there's small bone fragments of several saints. The altar is where the service of the preparation actually occurs. I guess the gifts are brought into the church, brought into the altar, and set on the table. That's where they're consecrated. And from there, the priest actually comes out and offers Holy Communion to everyone. The icon screen is still a screen. It still reminds us that there is a division between earth, which is us, and heaven, which is God. So there still is that difference. Yes, we have an opportunity get into heaven. That is what the church offers us. That's what it gives us. It gives us that path. The worship, we talk about the divine liturgy, which is, I think, in the Catholic Church over here, the Mass. So that you think of that analogy as well. The divine liturgy is not the only service. There are other services, and there are services in the evening every day that starts the new day. And then there's a morning service, and then there are different services throughout the day. Now, a community like this, there's no way you can serve that. So in the monasteries is really where that full cycle of the days occur. So most people come to church on Sundays, come for the divine liturgy. There are liturgies also during the week, especially for commemorating feast days or for commemorating saints in particular. The service is here in Houston. We have actually quite a few folks from Greece here, so we've tried to modernize, we try to do a lot of stuff in English, but for the most part, we still can maintain a little bit of the Greek. The Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Lord's Prayer are said in both Greek and English. Many of the petitions are repeated. If they're repeated, they're usually done one in Greek, one in English. But for the most part, you can say about 75 to 80% of the service is in English. So we have adapted a little bit. There is the tradition, but we've adapted a little bit the language. Simply put it in the language of the people. Same way the other churches did. Russian, for example, or Serbian. The icon screen, let me talk a little bit about the iconography that I mentioned. What you see is the icon screen has several saints. And one of the things that you'll see in common in all Orthodox churches are the icons, the four icons, two on either side of the royal gates. Okay? And the first one is, on the right side is Christ. The one on the left is the Virgin Mary holding Christ as a child. To my right, over there, to the right of Christ, is John the Baptist. And the one to my left of the Virgin Mary is the icon representing the saint or the event of the name day, the name of the church. This is Annunciation, so you see Annunciation, Gabriel announcing to Mary that she will bear Christ. The other icons are different saints depending on the church. Obviously, in our community, we have a lot more space. Other churches are a little smaller and they won't necessarily have it. The two doors you see with the hand-carved wood that's there are what we call the deacons' doors. And the deacons come out, they offer prayers, offer petitions. They come out on what would be your left side, and they go back in on what would be your right side. The icon on the door is the Archangel Michael. On the left door and on the right door is the Archangel Gabriel. And the significance of that is that Michael was the archangel who was put to protect the Garden of Eden after Adam and Eve were expelled. We have the opportunity to come back through Gabriel, who went to Mary to tell her that she would bear Christ. So we have that movement, okay, and that little bit of symbolism is present everywhere in everything you see in the Orthodox Church, in all the iconography and all the architecture for that matter. The new part of over the last couple of years, the new part of the iconography, again, like I said, is in the dome. At the top is Jesus Christ. The icon is called a Candocrator, okay? But though he who holds everything, okay? And it's Christ. He is the leader, as it were. He is the head of the church. Okay? And so you see it's kind of a play on words as well, that's all you see is the head and the upper torso. We, down here, are the body. We are the arms and the legs of Christ. We do the work of what needs to be done. Below Christ, you see, supporting him are 9 angels. And those 9 angels represent the 9 orders of angels that the church has seen. In the little ring that the angels are holding up, there is the first verse out of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So that's what you see in the Greek there. Below the angels supporting, you also see angels, more angels, and they're actually performing the divine liturgy. So what you see is the angels bringing in the gifts that are offered. Okay, when we talk about the gifts, that's the bread and the wine that is offered by the faithful that will be consecrated to become the body and blood of Christ. And so during the divine liturgy, the priests, with the altar boys leading them, and the deacons, will come out and process around the church and come up through the middle and bringing those gifts. That's what you see the angels doing. The second row of angels. Beneath those angels, you see a lot of icons of different prophets. Okay? And they're the prophets of the Old Testament. You see quite a few. Out of whom you'll see Jonas. You'll see also see Saint Elias, right over here. Solomon, David. So there's a lot of prophets from the Old Testament. Beneath them, in the ring that's there, is the genealogy of Christ. If you remember in Matthew, and actually in Luke as well, before Christmas, it is a very common reading in the churches that so-and-so, you got so-and-so, so-and-so, you got so-and-so, and you go down the line and get to Christ. That's the genealogy there. Beneath that ring, you get to the pendants. Okay, so far what we've done is we started with Christ. We started from Christ and gone to the angels. We went to the prophets and we talked about Christ. We went through the forefathers of Christ, so to speak, the genealogy of Christ. And now we're down to where Christ is teaching. Okay, so in the pendants, we have the 4 evangelists who wrote the 4 gospels. Matthew and John are on the front because they were actually 2 of Christ's disciples. And then Luke and Mark on the back who were part of the 7 that were additional apostles that Christ had, that he sent out. Okay? In the white space that you see, eventually what we're going to have is icons of the different major events in Christ's life that mark his life. For example, his nativity. And even we talk about the conception of Christ. This is announcing from Gabriel to the Virgin Mary that she will bear Christ. That's essentially his conception. That's the beginning of his life on earth. The nativity is there. That we'll talk about his baptism in the Jordan River, and all those icons will be around the church, but in the upper part of the side walls. We'll see a lot of other in the arches. We'll see a lot of other events that occurred in Christ's life. And then in the lower part, we'll actually see, which is very meaningful, are a lot of the saints throughout the years that were either martyred or just died natural lives, but are saints in the church. The idea of iconography, I know there's always a question about what's the role of the icon. The icon is there as a window for us. It's a window to the person. I used to tell my kids about it that you remember seeing your grandmother. She would always pick up a picture. And I remember seeing my grandmother do this, pick up a picture of me and just kiss it, or one of her other grandchildren, or her son, or her daughter, that she would just want to hug them. Okay, so they're not there, but I'll pick up a picture and I'll kiss it. That's the kind of thing that we have with icons, is that it's a reverencing of that person. It's our view, it's our window into their life right now. And so that's the nice part of having all the saints around us in the lower part of the church, is that we're all worshiping together. So it's not just the church militant here, the people on earth who are still alive, but it's the church triumphant as well that will be on the walls, those who have succeeded in what we would say is in heaven. That's what we see. That's the role of iconography in the church. There are below the four evangelists, you'll see lots of other little small medallion icons, and those are icons of the 70. Okay, I mentioned that Christ had his 12 disciples, but he also had 7 that went out, that he sent out permission to go out and spread the gospel. Okay, these are part of that group of 70. And so, trivia question: how many were in the 70? Actually, about 120. Good count. So, I mean, the number it was nice. Okay. What you will see, hopefully, when you come back in over the next few years, you'll see a lot more iconography as we gradually fill in the walls and the white space that's there now. Okay. At this point, I will kind of open it up. Oh, actually, hold on a second. Before I go there, I'm going to go to the vestments that are over here. Okay. Our priests, the vestments you see, the white robe, the white vestments are the vestments that the priest wears. And it's being a divine liturgy, because of the royalty, because of it's being with Christ, being with the full church, it's a very big deal. And so the priest has, essentially, this is his formal attire. And so what you see is a lot of the vestments you see the vestments that the priest wears. The deacon also wears, okay, and that's the gold vestments that you see. The deacon wears very bright colored vestments as well. The colors change with the seasons or with a feast day, depending on what time of year it is. You will also see purple vestments through Lent, signifying the kind of somber pattern that needs to be there. For feast of martyrs, red, or for Easter, red, because joyous celebration that's there. Gold is especially a joyous celebration. Blue for the feasts of the Virgin Mary. So the colors will change. The one thing I will draw your attention to is the sticherati. It's the collar that the priest wears that goes around his neck, that goes all the way down to the floor. So it's a stole that he wears that goes all the way down. And later, feel free to walk around and look and ask questions. That stole actually has tassels at a couple of places. Those tassels represent us, the people. So the priest is responsible for us as he is our shepherd. He is the one who is taking care of us or helping us to get closer to Christ. He's responsible for us. And that stole is called a petrachili. It's a petra, a rock, and it's hung around his neck. And the idea is that it's a weight, and that he has that weight. So we do the best we can. He helps us out in that. Okay, so it's a reminder to him that we are all in this together. That he has us in his hand. There's a couple other items that you'll see, a couple other icons that you'll notice are around the time of the resurrection, and then the 40 days or 50 days afterwards. You see over on the left, in the upper part, in the curve, you'll see Thomas reaching in to touch Christ on his side. Thomas was one of the 12 and said, when he wasn't there, when the other disciples went and told him, hey, we've seen the risen Lord. And he says, unless I feel the hole, unless I feel that his side, where the spear went in, I won't believe. And there's a week later, when Christ tells him, Thomas, go put your hand on it and feel this. And the nice thing is, we always question. Okay? And so Thomas gives us that example. It's okay to question. But don't just stop. Go find the answer. And this is the point, is that he goes to Christ. And he will, at that point, he believes. Flipping over to the other side is actually the Feast of Mid-Pentecost. I think a lot of us may not quite realize that Passover is at one end of 50 days, and what we call Pentecost now is at the other end of 50 days. Okay? And there was a feast in the middle. And that's where what you see is Christ, when he went to the temple, when he opened the beginning of the ministry, he opened the book of Isaiah and found where the text actually talks about him, about Christ. Okay? What you see in the upper part of the apse is Pentecost. You'll notice, if you get close enough, you can see kind of little tongues of fire over each of the disciples that were there. The biggest icon in the church is that of the Virgin Mary, and it's in the apse of the church over the altar. What you see is the Virgin Mary opening her arms. Almost, you tell a kid, come give me a hug. It's almost to that effect. Okay, so that to come, everyone is welcome in the church. That's the thinking, is that here is my son. He is our Lord. Please follow him. Everyone come and let's go. Let's do this together. That's the idea. Okay. With that, I will quit talking and see if you have any questions. I know I've kind of monopolized a lot of this. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I might.
If you'll use the microphone.
The artists who create the icons, are they local or do they come from Greece?
The iconographer who has done our iconography is from Greece. He's actually from Athens. He works at a monastery in Candelia, which is about 45 minutes north of San Antonio. There's an Orthodox monastery there. He goes there and he works. And the blue that you see is a little different than the traditional blue that you see. And his point was, I went out to West Texas, I saw the blue sky. That's the blue I'm using. Yes, sir.
Who are the patriarchs and what's their role?
Who are the patriarchs and what is their role? The patriarchs are the bishops, okay? So administratively, there are different levels. Originally, what Christ did, what the apostles did, the apostles were the first bishops. Then as they needed help, as they established churches, bishops were appointed in different areas, different regions. Administratively, somehow you got to herd all those cats, right? And so you have the bishops, then there's an archbishop, and eventually it became the archbishops. You get somebody to herd those cats, and then you've got the one at the top. That's the patriarch. Okay? There were, in the 5 original sees, the 5 original centers, each one had a patriarch. And there was one in Rome, one in Antioch, one in Jerusalem, of course. Those were the heads on earth of the church. Okay? So they were the administrative heads. They, again, the key thing is that they're administrative. They're all still bishops. And so that's why the ecumenical councils were so important, is because all the patriarchs may require that all the bishops come together. The idea is that we all get together, all the bishops come together, and decide matters of theology within the church. Today, what we would call the Patriarch of Rome is the Pope. In the East, they still retain the title of Patriarch. In Constantinople, Bartholomew is the Patriarch of, I guess the Patriarch that we fall under, that this church specifically falls under. Yes, sir. Question?
Did the artists paint the icons? Did the artists paint all the icons right on the wall, or how many of them were painted somewhere else and then put up?
The iconographer works on canvas. So all of this work, all the work you see was done on canvas. And being in Candelia, he's close enough, he can come, he can do his measurements, do what he needs to, get the canvas right, finish the canvas, and then what they come to do is put
So it's canvas
on the
glass.
wall.
And what's the schedule for the 2 walls that are still white?
The 2 walls, the upper part of the walls is 2025. The lower part of the walls is 2026. And the back walls in the choir loft is 2027.
Same artist?
Same iconographer, absolutely, yes, sir. Yeah, once you get started, you kind of don't want to change styles. Other questions?
How old is the artist? Young enough?
Well, yeah. I can say this, he can get up the scaffold and can get up all the way up there, so he's still young enough to do that. Whatever that is. Good. Thank you. I ask if you feel free to walk around, take pictures. I will be up here. Be glad to answer any questions you may have and discussion. Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the Greek festival. Make sure you get plenty of light.